Wait, let's take a deep breath. Think spiritual thoughts.
Deep breath. Think about spiritual beer.
Well,
exhale.
It's just beer in the end.
But nothing is just beer. This is
try and keep it humble.
Leashless beer.
Say that 10 times.
Leashless beer, 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 leashless beer.
That was 9, but who counts?
Leashless beer.
We are in Clearwater tonight. I'm Allison Morrow.
Hi, I'm Allison Morrow.
I'm Allison Morrow.
And I've gone to a lot of places.
On St. Pete Beach, Allison Morrow.
And now with my former Force Recon Marine husband, I'm going off-grid-ish.
Hey everybody, Allison here. We just finished some more subfloor removal in the Airstream, but that will be in the next video. Today is Trailer Talk Episode 2. And for this one, we are journeying down to Ventura, California. Now, we took a vacation last year in May to Ventura in 2018 to get some sun in the break of winter rain here in Seattle. And of course, when we were there, a monsoon blew through Southern California and it rained for like 3 straight days. But there was a bright spot. We found an organic brewery called Leashless Brewing, owned by a former Marine named John Gonzales. And because we ended up spending basically like our entire vacation there, because it was pouring down rain every day, we even got to sit down with John and talk to him about organic beer. So he left the Marine Corps, did some other stuff as a civilian, but decided his true passion was really beer and he wanted to open his own brewery. So now he is a 100% USDA certified organic brewery, Leashless Brewing in Ventura, California, and he has a lot of great stuff to share, so we figured why not share it with the rest of y'all. Now keep in mind this was taped back in 2018, so some of the stuff has changed. Like they said, you know, they were open 8 months back then. Now of course it would be like a year and 8 months, and you know, when he says later in the year talking about regulation, some of that stuff is a little dated, but the rest of the stuff he talks about is really interesting, and if you like beer, this one's definitely for you. So here we go.
So I'm here right now with John Gonzales. He is the owner of Leashless Brewing Company.
Nope, just Leashless Brewing.
Leashless Brewing, and it's in Ventura, California, and you are organic, USDA certified.
Correct. We're the only certified organic brewery between Santa Cruz and San Diego.
That's a pretty far stretch. When you see USDA organic, what am I getting?
So you were getting a beer crafted without the presence of genetically modified organisms, without residues of inorganic fertilizers or pesticides. We essentially craft beer whose raw ingredients are cultivated with the idea of creating an entire symbiotic relationship from the microbes in the soil all the way up. So when you think about it, making organic beer or anything organic is thinking about an end product from a very holistic perspective, where you're using nature with all of its power and beauty to make a product that is in balance with nature.
Can you give me an example of the opposite of that? The conventional model specifically, what are those ingredients that we would get in a conventional beer that we're not getting in yours?
Well, so all beer is made with barley, hops, water. There are certain agents that a conventional brewery can use to help pre-fine beer so that they could say it's unfiltered. And it may be unfiltered, but they can use a chemical in the beer that helps pull out all of the proteins and makes coagulants, just settles out so that they don't have to filter beer. They're still using a chemical, which we can't use.
What's that chemical?
Oh, it's Biofine is one of them. It's just a silicate, and it's using basic properties of a cation or anion structure binding to the opposite charge of a molecule. So let's say proteins from fermentation or phenol groups, and they are charged positively or negatively, and it binds to this silicate, which we call Biofine, and then more and more will bind and it coagulates. So it's like a little flake becomes a snowball and it settles out pretty fast. You can have clear beer within a day, whereas I need to give my beer about 5 to 7 days. I still need to run it through a filter if I really want crystal clear beer. And for some of these beer styles, I mean, just this ruby red of the Double, I could see the reflection through me, I could see through it. I mean, it's a beautiful beer. Part of what we do is find a yeast strain that will settle out relatively fast and that can work well with the filter without having so much loss, because there's just so much pertinacious material that has to get filtered out.
It seems like in the conventional model of pretty much anything, that time is a #1 value, making things faster and making more of them efficiently. And that when you're trying to go back to the organic model, which was the way things were done 100 years ago, 150 years ago.
Even 60 years ago, the advent of organic agriculture didn't actually start, the conversation didn't start till the early 1900s between, drawn on name blank,
okay.
essentially a Brit and a German. And the German scientists figured out that plants need nitrogen. It was a breakthrough. It was like the beginning of plant nutrition, if you will. And this Brit said, no, actually, there's more that's involved. And this debate went on and on, but after World War II, we had all these excess of munitions, and they figured instead of using ammonium nitrate for bombs, we could turn it into fertilizer. Think the advent of Miracle-Gro. And then once we start using this enhanced nutrient source, you can grow more biomass. And as you increase more biomass, you see an introduction and an increased introduction of infestations, whether it's pests or microbial, bacteria, viruses, soil-bound or airbound. And so then that drives that negative feedback loop requiring pesticides. And then you design a pesticide that works really well, but it kills everything. So now you have to figure out a way to insert a gene into something like corn that will make the corn resistant to the pesticide but kill all the pathogens. And then you have Monsanto, and now you have what we have today, where you have bacteria and pests that are resistant to Monsanto, and now Roundup has to change and everything with it. It's this really incestuous loop.
What does USDA certification for organic mean for your beer?
So all recipes before we brew have to be approved. And I break down the recipes. It shows who certifies what ingredient organic, lot numbers, the whole 9 yards. It's literally a long audit trail that would make an IRS audit look pretty easy, so that when our auditor comes in, he can go through our recipes and see what ingredients we use, who certifies every one of those ingredients, and checks that vendor and makes sure what's listed there, lot numbers and whatnot, matches what we do. It essentially means that we are 100% legit and authentic in what we do, because we have two parties looking at us. One, a third party. In California, we have third-party certifiers, and they conform with USDA. So before we can use the USDA logo and get approved at the federal level, we have to get approved from the state level, and the state uses a third party. So it's like all these tiers of being investigated on. While difficult to get, I think getting it actually has meaning, because it's not me saying, oh, well, I make it with organic stuff, or it's organic. It's the fact that I've gone through this entire process and learned what cleaning agents are not allowed, which ones are, and you start looking at why you can't use a certain agent, and you realize it might not be environmentally friendly in its manufacturing or how it breaks down. So it's a whole set of rules that make sure you are fairly holistic in the entire production cycle.
So does the organic label at this point mean that every ingredient that you use in your beer is organic plus the cleaning solutions and everything, or?
No. For example, water is natural, can't certify that organic. We have exemptions for brewing salts as long as they are mined and not synthesized by genetically modified organisms. So I have to prove that, yeah, they mine these things and not get them from some fermenter run by GMOs. So we're certified organic, and there's 3 levels of organic certification. One is if you use between 75 and 95% of your recipe by mass is with organic materials, and that's, you have this little...
What is that label?
Made with 75%
And do
organic.
they say that? You have to say on your made
Yeah.
with 75%. You can't just say USDA organic on your label.
Nope. In order to get the USDA organic logo on your label, you have to use 95% or more, and then it's just organic. If you use 100% organic, then you can use the term made with 100% organic or 100% organic.
And that's the third level. So there's
That's the highest.
Okay, so there was that first tier, which was what percentage again?
Up to 75% organic.
Okay, so the 75% is the first cutoff, 95% is next, and then 100%.
Yes,
basically.
by mass.
Okay.
Water being a natural ingredient is exempted, and so we are 99.9% organic. our brewing salts, it throws us off. Or the use of Irish moss throws us off. But
Okay.
I mean, other than that, it is as close as organic as we can get. I think some people do get it, the entire concept. I think a lot of people get the basic concept. And then a lot of people just drink the beer because they like the beer. And whether it's organic or not is irrelevant, or they really don't know what it means, they just like the beer. And for us, part of it is educating staff and all of our customers, even our restaurant partners and bar partners, what it means to be organic. And like all things, you could tell someone whatever you want to tell them, and then they grasp like a fraction, and either they're excited and they learn more on their own, and then that's when they really learn, or it just gets repeated through casual conversation. The goal is to use beer to help educate people and help change their preference, if only for that moment. And you can get organic lettuce or whatnot, but everyone drinks beer, and whether they're buying the beer because it's organic or not, for a moment in time they're voting to be organic. And at some point, I hope that beer helps change their preference so that when they go shopping, they'll choose organic lettuce over conventional lettuce. So they'll say, oh, this cereal is organic, let's try this. And slowly but surely, everyone starts their own process that we started a long time ago to truly learn what it is to be organic and sustainable. Because they're buzzwords. We throw them around like, I don't know, confetti sometimes without truly understanding what it means, the implications thereof.
We were talking earlier before we started this video about how even the changes in the labeling requirements have evolved as organic beer has become more popular, and that recently, at least I saw that hops, you were allowed to use hops that was not organic if 95% of your other ingredients were organic, and that changed, and now there are more changes. Can you run us through, I guess, what does a label, what do you have to do to get that certification right now, and then how is that changing again later this year?
So to be fair, the NOP, or the National Organic Program, is constantly evolving as the industries that are becoming more prevalent in the organic certification are evolving. So back in the day, there was a lot of interest to be a certified organic brewery, but we didn't have the materials. So Eel River, the #1 certified organic brewery, when they opened up, there was no, or very little organic hops. And so the argument is, how can we as an industry grow if we have limitations? And so naturally they made exceptions. As the organic craft beer movement increased, it created incentives for the farmers to allocate more acreage towards organic certification, and that's a huge investment. That's between 3 to 5 years of going all organic, but selling your product at conventional, because that's how long it takes for the soil microbes to change, and that's like the #1 indicator when your soil and your plot is organic versus conventional. So here these guys are taking these risks.
Financial risk because it costs more.
Absolutely, and they can't pass that buck on yet to us, but they do. And then at some point we have a wide array of different varieties and quantities of organically cultivated hops, whereby the NOP says, you know what, you don't need that exemption anymore. So we're going to take it, you now have to use 100% organic hops. And that's fine, we have a ton of varieties. We don't have all the latest and greatest that any conventional brewery has, but I think we have a good amount to make a hazy IPA right there, or any IPA. It's just a matter of being patient, and then the cost for organic hops is pretty high, almost like 200% that of conventional hops. So, but I digress. The NOP is constantly changing, and they're updating their requirements based on the availability of the raw materials required to make a particular product, in this case beer. One item we may very well be losing access to is Irish moss, a pre-fining agent used in the boil. It's called carrageenan. And apparently when it was allowed as an exemption for making organic beer, 2012 or whatever, they gave an expiration date, which happens this year. And apparently the expiration date for voicing your opinion was a couple years ago, and we're only 8 months old, so we missed that boat. It will just mean that it'll be harder for us to make clearer beer even before fermentation begins. And its purpose, just like biofine or these other agents, is to create a charge in wort, which is the sweet liquid that has yet to be fermented, and it pulls out proteinaceous materials that have a charge, so it makes for a clearer wort before fermentation. The clearer the wort, the cleaner the fermentation, less off flavors and whatnot.
Why do we care if it's clear?
There's an aesthetics too. I mean, I look at this beer and I love the fact that this is a ruby red beer. I could see right through it. I could see this through the door. It doesn't affect the flavor or whatnot, but there's definitely an aesthetic. Now, hazy IPA, you want it cloudy, but that's kind of the style guideline. And that's part of the mouthfeel, and in this case, you want proteins and polyphenols to be in suspension, and we go out of our way to make it so that it keeps the hop flavor in there, whereas here we kind of want it clear, and so I can either sit on this thing for an extra 2 weeks in hopes that it all clears out, or run it through a filter, or just say, you know what, it's gonna go in the keg as is, and maybe it'll add a little bit more carbonation. Carrageenan,
right?
Oh, you said it better than I did.
Woo! It's because you've had 3 sips of your beer and I've had 1. Say carrageenan 10 times very fast.
Carrageenan, 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 carrageenan.
All right, you win. You must be in the beer business.
It's just easier to say than leashless.
Leashless. You're right. I'll ask my dog to say that later. When you lose something like that, you have to find another organic alternative, right? Because you can't use the chemicals.
There really isn't. Not for.
So what are you going to do?
See what happens when you don't use it.
So we could just be changing the aesthetics of beer.
Yes. Now, while that may not affect flavor, beer is like food. There's a visual component, there's a way beer is presented that helps to attract the desire to drink it. And maybe it might not be a big deal, but I would think that unless the style guidelines like in hazy IPA expect or suggest that it's okay, we might take a hit for it. And it's one of those things where the industry is constantly evolving, which is good, but it's a slow wheel.
Is it like having a color spot on your apple, which really doesn't mean anything, but it's organic? It's like that song goes, I'll take holes in my apples, but leave me the birds and the bees, please, right? Is that, you know that song? Do I have to sing it for you? Don't
well, I mean,
it always seem, yeah. So
Counting Crows, you let that happen?
Yeah, sorry. But it's kind of the same thing, right? Like you're talking about, we've developed these ideas of beauty and taste around practices that may not be sustainable in the long term for the environment or for our health. So is part of rethinking something like beer in an organic fashion also causing the consumer to rethink what we look at as good versus bad?
I know, back in the day you expected IPAs to be a little cloudy, and now they've gotten to be clear. Consumer preference is always changing, and the studies definitely show that how a product looks affects whether we want to buy it or not, or whether we'll enjoy it or not. It's, for something like this, I think the rub is once it's gone and the industry demonstrates that we kind of need something so that we can be compatible to a certain degree with conventional breweries, it'll take a long time to come back. So is this a deal breaker for all of us? I don't know, but it is definitely indicative of changes that were made before there was enough of us to really voice our opinion. I mean, right now we have over 6,000 breweries, and we probably have 42, 43 organic breweries.
Who's we?
The US.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and we're probably close to 6,100, 6,200 by the end of this year. So we definitely have more breweries coming, and what, a fifth, 0.5% is organic. I mean, we're really a minority within an industry that's constantly changing. And for a beer consumer, you have never been in better shoes because you have so much variety and all these great breweries coming up. So how do you compete with all that while maintaining your ideals of being sustainable from the very concept of who you are, why you make what you make, and how you make it?
So how do you? I mean, what are your biggest challenges? If you were to tell people these are the top 3 or top 4 things that I stay awake worrying about at night, wondering if I'm going to be able to keep my business going? What are those?
If I'm here 40 years, I'm 80. Don't want to do that, but I get the gist. It comes down to price points. We compete, in a field that has created certain expectations in terms of quality, price points, serving sizes. And until, I always think of Stone. Because when Stone first opened up back in the 90s, I was actually an undergrad at San Diego, and I remember their growth wasn't fast. It wasn't like today. Pete's Wicked Ale was killing it, not Stone. But Stone kept on with a certain idea, and now they are what they are.
What are they?
#1 craft brewery, benchmark for IPAs, the only American craft brewery to open up in Germany. So they have definitely set a trend like no other brewery, and they're still independent. The idea that they stuck to their guns when the trend wasn't there yet keeps me going, because I hope at some point the trend for organic will be there. And when that trend is there, then we could properly value our beer and price it as such. If you think about the prices of Stone's beers, 20 years ago, there's no way they could have gotten away with that, but now they can. It's almost like you don't even blink an eye, you just spend the money and that's that.
Because you want the beer.
Exactly. So getting people to want the beer because the quality beer is gonna help create the value for the organic component.
So you said that your hops supply is 200% higher than
Approximately.
conventional hops.
Some are 250, but yeah, it's
But
very
your
expensive.
beer, when I came in here last night and found out about it, is pretty similarly priced to other breweries that I've been to. So how do you stay in business financially when you're having to price your beer so low and your ingredients are so high?
You make a compromise with margins and growth rates. So I try not to think too much, but I think about it all the time about how much margin my competitors make when they're selling the same beer or same volume for the same price. So our growth rate's a little smaller, and we have to be a little bit more patient and do our best to make beers that will meet organic certification, help minimize the issues that we have with our production, and can create the most value for us both in the tasting room and outside, whether it's a bar or restaurant, because ultimately we just need to grow. And the startup phase is always the hardest for any brewery, especially in a competitive field like Ventura or Southern California in general. But once we get established and grow, then I expect things to grow in fashion as well. But until our name comes with value, we have to do what we do at a price point that the general population is okay with. And on one hand, I don't necessarily mind that, because before we had this designation of organic, our grandparents, great-grandparents, everyone ate organic. There was no conventional anything. The white-collar, blue-collar, working man's way. And so if we can make this beer something that blue-collar, white-collar people can enjoy, then I think we win, because as a business, we want to make a profit, obviously, but the business really wasn't about making beer as much as using beer as a vehicle to help change the everyday consumer preference when a person goes shopping. Because ultimately, like all things, if we slowly, quickly would be preferred, but if we just change over time our preference from conventional to organic, then that gives incentive for these organic producers to make more of it. And then through economies of scale, the overall cost goes down. So then either A, conventional has to get even cheaper, or everyone just realizes it's just better, more profitable to be organic, and then that's what they do. And in the process, the true winner is not just ourselves and our health, but the health of our environment, which is already compromised.
It's interesting though, because you're coming into it saying, I can't assume that consumers will ever necessarily all have the value system of buying into organic. We really have to make it sustainable by the beer itself. It's got to taste good. It's got to be something that people want to just experience and enjoy, not necessarily a religious movement or something with a lofty ideal that they're buying into, like a charity. Like, you don't want to be a charity, you want to be a competitive business. And so, like you said, I mean, it really comes down to making sure your beer tastes good and that it's at a price point that people like, and then hopefully you grow your brand. Am I kind of getting it right?
Yeah.
So then, I guess what moving forward does the consumer do? Like, say I'm somebody and I'm interested in this stuff and I want to help people like you succeed. What do I do as a consumer?
As a consumer, you buy more of our beer. We've had lots of people go to different accounts, different restaurants, say, hey, you have to have Leashless on tap. And next thing you know, a phone call I can never get, they're now answering, and now we have an account there. And a lot of it is, I mean, a restaurant and a bar isn't necessarily in the business of hedging risk. They're in the business of selling a product that people want. And the easiest way for us to grow is to make a product that people want. We'll definitely be organic to the very bitter end. But it's making a product that people want, irrespective of whether they know it's organic or not, and that will help grow the brand, help spread the message. Is the key, really.
Like that the consumer is demanding it, and that's what opens the doors.
In any business sector, in a consumer-driven society, that's the only way things will grow.
It's interesting too, because I think, I think sometimes people think we wait for the government regulations to change, or we wait for, someone else, I guess, to come in and change things and make it easier, without realizing that actually we all are voting with our money every time we go out. We vote with our lifestyle, and perhaps that's even more powerful than when you go to your polling station once a year or once every 4 years for a president, that you actually are voting all the time when you pull out your pocketbook. And so, vote for John, right?
Vote Leashless.
2018. Woo! Let's real fast talk about the beer itself. This is your Unfiltered IPA.
It's our hazy IPA.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's crafted so that the polyphenols in the let me not get too geeky here. It's made so that the yeast stays in suspension. So you get some vitamins in that beer. But
I thought I felt good.
Well, that's just because you're leashless. The hazy IPA, it's an IPA designed so that the consumer gets all the flavor and aroma of the hops without the bitterness, essentially. And the haze is in part created because the polyphenols from the hops bind with some of the charged particles in the malt and the yeast, and you have this everlasting haze.
I've always been taught that drinking unfiltered gets you more nutritional value out of the beer. Is that true?
Well, I mean, that's all yeast right there, and things bound to the yeast. And so you think baker's yeast or brewer's yeast has lots of B vitamins, has some non-essential amino acids. So yeah, I mean, it's.
You don't want your yeast?
No. And that's a good beer. I just like my Belgian Double. I'm a huge Belgian fan. So I figured if we're gonna go and be an organic brewery, which is, you could argue, one level of differentiation, we were also gonna be a Belgian-centric brewery. They're probably the easiest beers to make and meet organic certification, but they have a ton of flavor. And I'm a believer that beer is like food, and it pairs well with food, and I think no other country of origin type beer goes well with food than Belgian beers.
Interesting, some of the people who have tried to go more mainstream with organic food, whether it's like say a whole restaurant, for instance, you're gonna have a whole restaurant, it's gonna all be organic. they have to be a little bit more simplified with their menu. And I'm curious, with beer, does that affect you? Do you have to keep your menu maybe more simplified than, say, someone who can just grab ingredients from anywhere?
No, so for example, and it's another reason why I love this beer, we don't have all the ingredients to make a Belgian double like anyone else, because some of them are conventional, so we have to backdoor flavors. And we failed miserably in getting some of those classic flavors, but we got these cool notes that you wouldn't find. This beer has hints of rum and cinnamon, and you won't really find that in a Belgian double, but we didn't have certain things that are standard. We just kind of had to backdoor it, if you will. So in some cases it's easy, in some cases there's a challenge, but like all challenge, if you approach it the right way, you can come up with something really cool and different, which helps to differentiate yourself from every other Belgian double out there, or beer of any style, really.
So you are a former Marine. Thank you for your service. Well, how did you get into making beer? And what were you doing before this?
I got into the hobby of making beer, and I started winning awards in the region, and then I just thought it a good idea to take this up as a business. I was helping to manage a few genetics labs at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And I just wanted to move back home. I'm born and raised Carpinteria, just next town up on the beach. And with my academic background, I couldn't find a job that would pay me what my background warranted. So I figured if I was going to risk competing against someone who's happy making $30,000 a year, I could just give this a go. And along the way, our dietary preferences changed. I'd always tried to live as healthy and natural as possible. I was a vegetarian for a long time, and I thought eating vegetables and whatnot was what I needed to do. But then we came across certain books in like Food Inc. or Omnivore's Dilemma, and it opened my eyes that actually just eating vegetables is irrelevant. You're still a part of a problem. You had to go organic. And so when I started to think about, well, my entire career has been somewhat chosen because of my preference to be surfing and be in the water, and it didn't really lend me to that type of lifestyle. It actually got me more landlocked than anything else. And so I got burnt out. I figured, well, if I'm going to do something like this, it's probably going to be very challenging. And if I don't put all of my passions into this, then when I burn out, I'm just going to walk away. And you can't be successful in that situation. So I figured, okay, if I enjoyed making beer. I enjoy talking about beer. I've got
Clearly
2 science backgrounds. I got 2 masters in aquatic sciences, so I can geek out with the best of them. And I appreciate all that, and I appreciate the look in people's eyes when they say, oh wow, this is really good. And then I thought, if I could just take that passion and add on to it the passion of living sustainably, like what if I can use beer as a vehicle for change when you may not have even wanted to change? Like, that's really cool when you can backdoor that and there's no turning back. And that's when I went with the whole idea.
Okay, I am now going to stop asking all my boring reporter questions, and I'm going to invite my husband, who is also a Marine, to ask the most important question, which is, what does leashless mean? Leashless, 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 leashless.
Was that 10? I think she cheated.
That's what she does. She's, oh, honey, thanks for leaving me the beer.
Oh, sorry.
No, this is mine now. Damn it. I really like that foam ball.
You should go get another one. What's that?
We'll do that. That's the slotted.
What do you think of slotted?
I like it. It's got a little bit of extra.
That extra bitterness. I mean, you expect it's a double IPA, but I like Belgian, so foam ball is cool. V-Town is very easy drinking, so I dig it.
Driving down the road, and I see the sign on the thing right away. She's like, "Leashless, what's that?"
Wait.
And
You saw the sign.
I saw the sign.
So the main logo, what'd you think of it? Did you get
it? It was cool. Oh, I totally got it.
So what was it?
It was a surfboard, and it's the whole idea of being off the leash. And there's two sides to that, because it's like,
So
on
wait.
one hand, depending on the size of the wave, it's like, hey, a leash can be my friend. There's a whole nother discussion. That's a rabbit hole we could go
Old
down.
school style, man. No leash, you lose it, you
Yep.
swim.
Exactly.
It was a way, well, one, they didn't have a leash back in the day.
No.
But once they came out the kook leash, it was still a way to determine your skill level.
Yeah.
And that's why I love leashless. Like back in the day when I surfed 2-3 times a day, I went leashless. So it didn't matter if it was a couple foot overhead, pushing double overhead, then I'd definitely wear a leash because I knew I was out of my element. I just want to catch a ride and enjoy it. But 2 foot overhead, 4 to 6 foot, no worries. Super fun all the time. And just having that freedom, not getting tangled. You could cross step to the nose, come back. Our logo is essentially the marriage of a hop flower on top of the bottom of a twin fin fish. It's
OG, triple OG.
It's historical. So
Yeah.
George Greenough would serve his knee boards at Rincon, and that ended up being the fish.
Yep.
And the fish it's a short board, rides like a long board, really beautiful drawn out turns. Leashless wasn't the original brewery name. It was Sessions Brewery, and there was a particular brewery that gave me a call and gave me a cease and desist
I can guess
before
who
we
that
even
is.
opened. And we had a really good argument along with, 15 other breweries, also in the same shoes. And we were supposed to open, so we opened July 8th of 2017, and we were supposed to have opened June of 2016.
Wow.
And this was February. My lawyer was like, hey, you should change your name. You don't want to get a cease and desist after your grand opening. So we did, and Leashless was supposed to be the name of our gluten-reduced series. And so I thought, it didn't take long, but after being frustrated having to change the name, I realized, Leashless is a fantastic name because it embodies old school surfing, which requires skill and grace.
Yep.
It also encompasses the idea of being free, and our products are free of pesticides, inorganic fertilizers, GMO products, and so it was a natural fit.
It made total sense. When we
also-
drive by, it made complete and total sense to me. I was just like, oh yeah, I get that. Like,
So what we've learned, now surfer for longer than I've been, for almost my entire life. And for me, I hear leashless, I think surfing without a leash. It just so happens there are more dog owners in Ventura than surfers. So when we first opened up and people are coming in with their dogs on leash, it's like, whoa, we have a dog-friendly
Oops.
patio on leash. When we came up with the idea of having gluten-reduced beers, the first thing I thought was, okay, we're gonna have people who have gluten allergies, celiac. When you have one autoimmune disease, you may have others. And so maybe we're gonna attract people who are sensitive to even dog dander. So we gotta think big term. Our goal is to sell as much organic craft beer to as many people as possible. It's like we're creating an army of organic aficionados, and why do I wanna limit it to just dog lovers?
So how do you feel now, 8 months in? You glad you did it?
I'm tired.
That might be the beer.
It is, actually. I am, I have to say it's been a real challenge and a good one. It's made me grow in ways I never, ever envisioned. And 8 months in, we have about 32 accounts with more coming, and I just see nothing but growth, positive growth in the future. So, and at some point I'll be able to take time off to go surf, maybe 3 times a week, maybe 4. Priorities.
Yep.
We got lucky with this spot because we're half a mile away from the point, one of my favorite spots to surf, and at some point I'll get my bike with surf racks. I'll be able to come in, do what I need to do, go bike to the point, have session, come back, shower off with our on-demand hot water heater, and get right back to the grind.
Curious, when people come in here, what would you say the percentage is of folks who came in here because they wanted organic beer versus someone who just saw a brewery?
We get a lot of people coming in who say, hey, we hear you're the place for Belgians, or we've been hearing a lot about you and we've been meaning to come in. I think there's a very small percentage that come in specifically because we are organic. Anecdotally speaking, I think that number is increasing. Ventura has become a very big beer town and beer county. like all of Southern California. And anytime there's a new brewery, people just want to go flock to it and check it out, and then they'll come back 6 months or a year later once everything's worked out. And it's really all about the beer right now on a large scale. But we're leashless, we don't judge. We'll just pour beer and keep pouring beer, and at some point it'll be like, oh, you're organic, cool. But right now we're the new craft beer, we want to check out the brewery. And
what would happen if the whole world just started drinking organic beer and all our hops was made organically? What do you think that would look like for environmental rejuvenation? Any ideas?
So an author, Florencia Ramirez, just gave out a book not too long ago called Eat Less Water, and she documents organic agriculture saves water by 30% as compared to conventional. So right there, that's a significant savings in a finite resource that we can choose throughout the country and improve our landscape. There's also data, it's been around for a while, showing that organic, or rather conventional feedlot cattle consumes more petroleum at all the various stages to produce that steak than if we were all driving Humvees. I'm not advocating we all drive Humvees. I think the point is how we choose our food can make a greater impact on our immediate environment and our immediate health than driving. I am a huge advocate for making whatever change is possible in your life. I just don't want people to say, well, I have a Prius and that's all I need to do. It's just one aspect of the entire spectrum. And in an issue like environmental health, carbon sequestration, these are very complex issues, and the answer also has to be complex. But it's really just behavioral choices, our habits. And I think it behooves all of us to go organic to the point where organic can be as inexpensive as conventional. And that's the gist. I mean, we as a country waste so much food. As a species, we waste so much food, and it's not because we're not producing enough, it's because we're producing too much and we don't package it appropriately, and so stuff gets sent to the grocery store and it won't get sold, and it goes to the dumpster. We can literally produce a fraction of what we currently produce and change how we package and sell things, and I think we'd be better off as a society. And that's actually the interesting thing that we never really think about. It's not, well, we have starving people and we need to make more food. It's, no, we have a huge amount of waste, and being efficient in producing the food isn't the answer. In fact, that's bad for the farmer. The more they produce, the cheaper it is, so then they have to produce more and they spend more money on improving efficiencies, and that locks them into debt. We need to figure out better ways so that when we do harvest, everything that we harvest does get consumed and it's not wasted, because then that's an extra cost, and no one likes to carry on extra costs. So we don't need to produce more food, we don't need to be more conventional, we need to be more organic and set up our shopping production so that we minimize the waste of what is produced.
So what does that mean for me as the consumer? Does that mean I totally change my value system for the cost of food, what I expect food to cost, or I buy a cheaper car so I can spend my money on salad that's organic? Or, how do I balance my budget if I'm somebody who wants to buy into this? Can I live the typical American mainstream lifestyle and afford to drink organic beer? Or do I have to change my lifestyle altogether? Changing
a consumer preference, I think, is changing a lifestyle. That's the only way it's going to work. I think it's all about a change in valuations, recognizing that conventional agriculture is inexpensive only because our taxpayer dollars are help subsidizing the farmers who make corn, soybeans, the other things that make it into all our foods. High fructose corn syrup is everywhere. There's a lot of corn products and soybean products that are now ubiquitous, and they're only ubiquitous because they're cheap. They're cheap because we subsidize. If we took a step back and really asked ourselves, what's the true cost of oil, we'd find that it's actually subsidized as well. And if we were to look at what happens if you remove all the subsidies from corn manufacturing and still include all those components into all the foods they're in and compare it to organic, I think we'd see that there's a tick for tack in price, or maybe organic would be a little bit more competitive. And that's a fantastic doctorate program for someone in some economics program or whatnot. But no, maybe Washington State, just saying. But I think it boils down to each person has to decide to what extent they're gonna go organic and allow that change to grow naturally into something bigger and greater. No one's gonna say right off the bat, I'm going 100% organic, because that's a sticker shock thing. And anything that maintains the test of time is a lifestyle change. So slow and steady wins the race. And if you want to start buying organic vegetables, which are cheaper now than they've ever been, and drive a Prius, cool. If you want to go organic vegetables and support your local farmer who raises chickens and whatnot, is certified organic, and go straight to them and bypass the grocery store and drive a Honda, that's fine. There's all sorts of studies that demonstrate, maybe a car that gets 38 miles per gallon is more cost effective in the long run than a Prius.
But maybe the lesson is too, for all of us, that you can slowly just take one thing like beer and just change that.
Exactly.
Just change that one thing, and then you work on your next thing.
Beer is one of those things we all drink for the most part, and it's a fantastic way to dip your toes into. Don't
actually dip your toes in the beer.
I don't know, maybe it's good. I've never tried it personally, but again, we don't judge, we just pour beer.
We will not be showing you that in this video.
That's version 2. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be a brewer if I didn't say go beer first, but in the end, you just gotta decide, I want to go organic and give this a go, and you'll find that, the quality is better than it's ever been, price points are cheaper than it's ever been, and the more of us that go organic, the more the price points go down, and it truly becomes something where it's affordable for everyone and the person who's running the business. Because in the end of the day, you have to make something to live off of.
Is there pushback from conventional beer making? Has that been tough? Are there lies? Is there libels spread about organic beer? I know, obviously, when the organic movement started several decades ago, there were all kinds of naysayers. Do you face that kind of criticism?
I've gotten the idea of organic doesn't mean anything. And I love those statements, because then I just delve into a conversation and they either get it or they get upset, because no one likes to be corrected. And sometimes I'm abrasive.
Try me. Let's hear your most abrasive, John.
You didn't incite that response. But trust me, sometimes it's you just go straight for the throat and keep moving on. Other times it's like a fun conversation. Sometimes it gets academic, but it's that idea of, we all have preconceived notions until they're not preconceived notions, and sometimes people are just. And
okay, let's pretend like I just saw you at your brewery here at Leashless, okay, and I come in and I'm like, yeah, this is great, but come on, we all know organic's a farce. This doesn't really mean anything. It's just a marketing scheme. What do you say to me?
No, that's fine. Because you know what? It is a marketing piece. It's saying that I've gone through a series of steps to make sure that my product is as clean, environmentally friendly as possible. I'm not window dressing it saying I'm a sustainable company. We are organic because we're a sustainable company. That's the foundation that we build everything upon. So when someone says it's a marketing thing, it's like, well, yeah, because we go through so much effort to make sure that we're authentic. I'm not just spray painting we're organic and saying, yeah, we're organic, and not knowing what that means. I know what that means. I could talk here to Faces Blue about what organic is and why it's important and why that seal's important. Because you as a consumer, you need to know that when you see that logo, it actually has meaning. In a time when we have no more country of origin labeling, Purdue Farms can literally have one farm here in the States and the rest in China. And all that chicken can say made in the US because they have one farm. That's not appropriate labeling, that's mislabeling if you ask me. But when you see that sign, it means I've followed national standards that are upheld at the state level to make sure that we are following a program that has value and meaning, and we're not hiding it. We're not afraid of it. It is a marketing piece because it's saying who we are.
And why do I care about organic? Why is it different?
Why do you?
I don't know, you tell me.
Well, it's different because, again, we're looking at how to run a business as sustainably as possible. And it's not we're looking at to put in solar panels, which are cool, or a bioregenerative diesel plant, cool. We're literally looking from how we make our basic products to do the most environmentally friendly way of doing it. And that's by getting products that are GMO-free, cultivated without the use of inorganic fertilizers or pesticides, and taking those and using practices that cause no harm or minimal harm to the environment, if you will, to make a product that side-by-side comparisons, you'll have no idea it tastes organic, because what does that mean? It's just beer. But it's the processes that we've undertaken to make just this beer. And that logo says everything.
I have a lot of respect for businesses like yours, which say, hey, we're going to focus on the one product that we do, which is beer, and make sure that that's sustainable versus maybe losing our attention to the periphery.
We also make soda.
And soda, okay, so that too. But you're sitting here saying, hey, instead of getting caught up in having the periphery before we get to the main product, we're working at the center out. So we're gonna start with the thing that we do every day, which is our main product that we're giving to people, and we're gonna make sure that's sustainable. And then, hey, we work on top of that.
And at any given point, a conventional brewery can go organic. It's just easier to start organic and grow upwards.
Right.
Instead of going from conventional when you're already producing, I don't know, 10,000 barrels a year, and you want to go organic, and now there's not enough supply. Mm-hmm. Some large breweries were organic and just didn't have the supply to continue on. So I'm hoping that the risk the farmers take to go and produce organic components can minimize so they do more. And I mean, it would be my dream that we were all organic breweries to the point where organic was no longer needed because conventional just doesn't exist.
We just called it beer.
Oh, and I believe we did that before 1940.
We just called it beer.
Just beer.
Okay, well, cheers. John, thank you.
Cheers.
I hope that we covered everything because it's good beer. And let's stop talking and start drinking.
You're way behind.